And we are live. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining our live panel discussion on the horror of found footage. Of course, that means today we're going to be talking about found footage through the horror lens. Very, very excited because personally, it's probably my favorite horror subgenre, aside from extreme, but that's that's something else. Although I know that Adrian, we can touch on that a little bit. So I just want to go around and introduce everyone. Please do say hello. So I'm going to start with Mary Beth McAndrews, who is a journalist, writes for Dread Central, Daily Grindhouse, and a ridiculous amount of other amazing outlets. How are you today, Mary Beth?
I'm so excited to be here to chat about found footage. This is very exciting.
Well, thank you for joining us. Then next up, we have Ashlyn Clark, who is the writer and director of The Devil's Doorway, which I have to say absolutely scared the crap out of me and made me jump like a million times in my little studio. How are you doing today, Ash?
I am doing great, Zoe. Thanks for asking.
No,
that's very kind of you, by the way. I'm sorry I scared you, but also not sorry. That's what I was trying to do.
I'm glad. It's hard to be scared nowadays of horror, so I'm very happy about that. Then we are joined by Jed Shepherd, who is writer and executive producer of Host and Dashcam. And Host has just been announced as scientifically proven the scariest film ever, overtaking Sinister. So, Jed, well done to you and your incredible team for making that happen. How are you today?
I'm really good, thanks. And yeah, obviously it's cool that's been said, but I don't know. I'm scared by a lot of things. But yeah, no, really happy to be here, and like you collected a great panel together, so I'm excited to talk about my favorite subgenre as well, which is found footage. It's quite obviously.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Adrian Tusvay, which I think I've butchered it already, even after asking you. You, of course, are writer, director, and also stars in Be My Cat, a film for Anne, which I just got my limited edition, ultra rare copy through the post today, which I'm very excited about. So how are you today, Adrian?
Thanks. I'm so happy to be in this company of this wonderful people. You know, we all have this thing in common, this found footage things, and yeah, I've seen your movies, and yeah, really excited. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think I'm certainly the most excited. But yeah, thank you so much for all joining me. So I guess let's kick off our discussion. I think my first question for you all, and I'm going to start with you, Adrian, because you were last time, is what's been your personal experience with found footage horror films, and how did you first discover the genre?
Well, I think my first experience with found footage was with the Blair Project when I saw it on TV. I knew nothing about all that viral, crazy marketing campaign that preceded it and all that. You know, it didn't reach us in Romania, but it just moved, you know, on TV. And I saw that it was in a film magazine. Back then, I didn't have internet or anything. I saw it was rated 4 stars out of 5, you know, and I said, "Wow, great film!" So I gotta watch it. So it impressed me, but I don't think I don't think it's like. I didn't have like revelation. I need to do found footage and stuff like that. You know, I think that happened when I was like kind of in high school, and later after I studied acting, when I studied a type of method of acting method, you know, and a type of theater directing as well. You know, making these types of shows that have no elements whatsoever to remind you that you are watching a show. You know, things have our teacher always tried to do these moments of life, you know, that audiences would look and would be like, oh my God, is this a show or is this happening for real, you know? And then I made the connection, you know, with my education, my acting education and my theater education. I made a connection with found footage. You know, oh my God, those guys did the same thing in found footage, you know, what these guys in Romania are doing in theater, you know. And I combined this, and that's how I ended up making found footage. You know, I wrote a found footage manifesto. I created an entire philosophy. I'm not sure if I created it or I just observed it, but I definitely structured it and put it in a manifesto, and that helped me a lot in with the principles that I applied in my first movie.
Amazing.
Yep.
And Mary Beth, I want to ask you the same question, because you claim that, I think you say you are a found footage defender, which I absolutely love, and I know you love the genre. So what was your kind of first experience with it?
So my first experience was also the Blair Witch Project, and I actually live 45 minutes from where it takes place, Burkittsville, Maryland. I grew up in the state, so this movie haunted me before I even saw it, because like everyone in Maryland, because we don't have a lot, like always said, "Oh my God, the Blair Witch Project happened here. Oh my God!" And so I was always scared of going camping, even though I hadn't seen it yet. So like the Blair Witch Project had a hold on my tiny little heart before I even saw it. And then when I saw it, I think I was in middle school, which was pretty young to see that movie, I will say. I was so scared that I threw a pillow at my dad for making me watch it, and I wouldn't let him leave the house. Like I had to go with him everywhere because I couldn't be left alone in the house. And of course, I love that. I mean, like you take that, every horror lover is like, is you get that one kind of nugget of fear, and you're like, follow that forever. So I loved Paranormal Activity and Clover. Like I loved all of the big ones that came out, and then I was just really enamored with the abilities of filmmakers, including all of you here. Like it's very, very cool to be with all of you here. I don't make movies; I just watch your movies and write about them and yell about them on the internet. So like this is really cool to be with everybody. But it's even more recently, I got really obsessed with it after I revisited As Above, So Below, and just like really was so impressed with that kind of filmmaking technique, and got really obsessed with thinking about it during the pandemic. And so that's kind of when I really kicked up my obsession with the subgenre. I've always loved it, but especially in the past year and a half, 2 years, I've really like been hitting the ground hard of like, this is a very important subgenre, especially for now when we're in isolation, as you can see with hosts, like, and why this is such an important format for storytelling. And I will sing the praises of that forever.
I'm so glad that you both mentioned the Blair Witch Project, because my dad also made me watch that and told me it was 100% real, and I was like, this is the worst knowledge ever. I mean, absolutely terrifying. Like, you know, thinking that is real just kind of ruins your life. And we'll come on to the realism in a little bit, but what about you, Ash? What was your first experiences with found footage?
You know, big surprise here, but it was also the Blair Witch Project. So my mother, who hates horror films, cannot stand them, never really goes to the movies. My dad was a big horror buff, but my mum was not into it. For some reason, she ended up going to the cinema with one of her friends to see the Blair Witch Project before I saw it, and she came home and she said, that wasn't real. You know, they're all saying that it's real and everything. I don't believe it for a minute. And she was completely not impressed. So then I didn't get a chance to see it until it came out on, in those days, it was probably, did we even have DVDs? I can't even remember now. Feels like forever ago. Until it came out and I could go to like, you know, Extravision, which was our version of Blockbuster, rent it, and thought, well, sure, this is not going to be scary. My mother, who can't even watch Hammer horror films, but she's terrified, she was like, this film is nothing, you know. So I thought I'll just watch this, you know, Friday night by myself. I lived at the time in this creepy house that a priest used to own. And it was just like, the whole thing was sinister. I was getting his like Catholic, his catalogs for, you know, all of his chasubles and, you know, wow, Fruit of the Vine and all this stuff. So it was a weird house anyway. And I was there by myself. Classic sort of horror film setup. I watched the Blair Witch Project and it terrified me. It scared the bejesus out of me. And I watched it several times that weekend and I was like, oh my God, I found it so scary. And I still find it scary. And part of that might be because I went into it with lowered expectations, you know, but like my mum said, it wasn't scary at all. But I think it is a genuinely really scary film. And I think it's really good too. And like yourself, Mary Beth, I defend it always. It became very fashionable very quickly to slag it off. But I will defend it to my dying breath. I think it's a properly scary film, and it's clever as well. And yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. Like, I don't think, I mean, some people will argue that, but that's why we're here, to argue the other way. And what about you, Jed? Was it also the Blair Witch, or have you got a different one up your sleeve?
I got a slight different one. It was Ghostwatch for me, because obviously being from the UK, the legend of Ghostwatch was in the ether before the Blair Witch Project. It was 1992, and I was too small to have kind of like seen it live. Though, like, even in school, like, people used to talk about it quite a lot. So I finally got a version of it, because they never released it on DVD or anything for the longest time, till like 2003, I think. But I had a VHS of it that I either got off early eBay, or someone gave it to me. It's really badly copied, with all of the kind of idents of the shows before and after. And because I watched it in that format, I did think it was real. And because the presenters were real life BBC presenters, I just assumed the BBC would never do this to us. They would never trick us like this. So genuinely, like, I thought that was real for the longest time. And even though obviously you can check on the internet, it's not real, and it's got written by Stephen Volk on it, I just thought it was real. It was just too real. And it was just done in such an incredible way. And I think it still stands up to this day. And it's great when I see, especially with Americans, discovering Ghostwatch, because it was kind of kept from America for the longest time for some reason. But like, everyone kind of seems to love it. So it was that, but also it was slightly even earlier than 1992. I got another thing on VHS, which was the Macpherson Tape, otherwise known as UFO Abduction, which is probably one of the realest found footage movies you can get, because it's so shoddily done. It feels like there was no editing. It's just a guy with a camcorder at a kid's party. Aliens show up, and it just feels like I shouldn't be watching this. It just feels way too real. And then obviously the Blair Witch Project, which is probably the greatest horror film of all time. Definitely for me the best found footage movie. And I got to speak to Eduardo Sanchez recently on a podcast, and it was funny because he kept on trying to turn the conversation around to host. But he was like, where did you get this idea? Where did you get this idea? It's like, the Blair Witch Project, your film, is where we got every idea. It's like, you made the template. It's like, what are you talking about? Don't give me praise. You guys did it. We just copied you. So
I absolutely love that. But that's amazing. I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, I think the Blair Witch Project was so influential on the genre as a whole. But also I love that you spoke there about UFO abductions, because my actual first way into found footage was I was looking for university at found footage, doing an article, and I was looking at that exact film because I just really resonated with it. Then I stumbled across Cannibal Holocaust and my life changed, and I was like, oh gosh, it can go very far, which is obviously one of the things I love about found footage. But we've touched on here kind of about the fact that a lot of us defend found footage. So I kind of want to ask you all, why do you think found footage gets a bad rep? Compared to some of the other subgenres of horror, it's often slated for, cinematography, whether there even is any cinematography, kind of shaky cam, all of these elements. So I want to throw that over to you, Mary Beth, to start with.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. I've had so many conversations about this with people, but I think that what happens with found footage is that it is like the shaky camera, and it's the fact that people are like, why are they even holding the camera? Like, why are they filming? And there's always that question is always like the first one. I feel like people always say, like, it's so dumb, and they don't like the characters, and they just think, oh, this is just like a cheap way to make a horror movie. And like, yeah, it is, I think, a lower budget way to make a horror movie, but I also don't think people realize like the limitations that that can put on filming, as everyone here probably knows more than I do. But I think the format is so real and makes you feel like you're part of what's going on, which makes it feel super uncomfortable, like you're watching a snuff film. I think a lot, like, Blair Witch Project felt that way with the marketing. Be My Cat made me feel this way actually when I watched it, and I was like, I feel kind of gross watching this movie. So props to you, Adrian, for that, because it made me feel gross in the best possible way. But I think there's this sense of realism that I think disarms people and makes them uncomfortable. Like, you know, when you watch any other movie, you're super not aware. You're the opposite. You're so unaware of the camera. You're just kind of experiencing the movie. You know it's edited. You know there's cuts. You know it's going to kind of expect the narrative structure. But with found footage, it flips that entirely on its head, and you are very aware of the apparatus of the camera, which I think freaks people out. You're like, wait, this is a movie, and like you're very aware you're watching a movie, and I think that experience is a little bit unsettling a lot of the time. Like, oh, I want to pretend I'm not watching a movie. I want to like turn my brain off. But found footage to me always wants you to engage with it very directly. Like you have to watch it. If you aren't paying attention, you're going to miss that jump scare. Like Paranormal Activity is a big example of this. Like if you look away for 2 seconds, you're going to miss that shadow. You're going to miss that really, really quick piece of tension that it isn't brought to your attention with a music sting or like quick editing. It happens and goes away, and you're not as clued into it because the camera isn't always telling you where to look. And I love that because like the format wants you to engage with it on a more meaningful level, and I think that's hard for some viewers to get into. Like how they want to be fed that, and I get it. Like it's a movie, you kind of want to be fed the scares, but found footage wants you to more critically engage and actually watch what's going on the screen and look at everything going on. Like it doesn't just look to the one corner. It's like a scavenger hunt. Like where is the ghost going to appear? And I think that's just so fucking cool. Pardon my language. Like it's just so cool that this is a format that really wants to engage more directly with its audience than any other kind of horror, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You're right. It feels very interactive, which is, you know, compared to a lot of the other subgenres of horror, I think you've almost feel quite removed from found footage can be so amazingly real in many ways. And what about your thoughts, Adrian? Because as Mary Beth touched on, Be My Cat, a film for pretty fucked up. Let's not lie. I think, a lot of us felt gross watching it, which, you know, for me is like the perfect kind of descriptor of a movie. Have you found with your film that, you know, you've got like kind of any bad commentary around the fact that it is shot in found footage? What's kind of been your experience with that?
Nobody complained about Be My Cat about being found footage. Yeah, I think because he's trying to convince Anne Hathaway. I think he has a very solid reason why he keeps filming. Like nobody can say like, oh, why is he keep filming? The moment when he realizes in the end of the movie, when he realizes that that he doesn't have to make a movie for Anne Hathaway, he stops filming, and that's how the movie ends. You know, you can't complain about that. So yeah, I didn't have any complaints in terms of the concept, in terms of the found footage concept with my movie. But what I can maybe add is also how found footage is viewed in the industry. Because, for example, right now I'm working on a new project, and I had some bigger industry insight. You know, a producer who is more experienced than me, and he's in industry, and he's like, man, like you got to do a traditionally shot film. Unless you do a traditionally shot films, investors, executives, nobody would give a shit on you, literally. They will not give you a bigger budget to make a serious film or whatever, you know, or a studio film, you know, like you need to prove yourself, you know, even if your found footage films are like the best ever and the traditional one that you make is the shittiest ever, they will still say, wow, yeah, good, he's good, he can do it, you know, just because he shot it. They are so much biased in, I don't know why. Anyway, so yeah, it's a bigger issue for me, not why audiences don't like it. It's a bigger issue for me right now professionally, you know, the fact that people in the industry don't want it, and I have to do a movie that, I don't know, at the same time, I'm in a period in my career when I feel like also trying something new. Like I don't feel like necessarily doing again a found footage film. So thankfully, yeah, these two kind of came together. But yeah, it's weird. There are a lot of obstacles. Yeah. And by the way, I wanted to say one thing. When I think when Jed mentioned that Ghost Watch, or no,
Ghost Watch.
Yeah, exactly. So then I remembered, hey, just a second, I had an earlier experience with found footage as a child. The thing, but nobody saw it as a movie. Everybody saw it as a real thing, or at least as something fake, but not the alien autopsy video. That video that was claimed like everybody, and I'm not even sure if I saw the images, but I remember just reading. My mom was reading some supernatural newspapers, and there was that image of that alien cut, and oh my god, I was creeped out as a child because that actually, and I felt bad for the alien because he was so vulnerable there, and he has his flesh cut out open, like oh my god, like. That terrorized me. And only recently, or very recently, I realized, like, oh wow, like those guys really created a piece of art there because because so many people thought it's real, and it's actually found footage film. It's a found footage short film, practically.
I know the exact image. I had an alien book when I was younger, and I used to sit. That image was in there. And I remember I used to open it to my parents and be like, "What is this? Like, is this real?" It was. But also, I felt sad for the alien too. I was like, "Poor little thing. Like, it's just laying there, looking upset." So I'm glad it wasn't just me.
I also love that your mum, Adrian. I love that your mum reads supernatural newspapers. Like, that's a
yeah,
cool mum.
she's crazy. I'm like, okay, don't like years ago when I was a teenager, like please don't stop talking about this stuff and about aliens. That's all she talked about, aliens and supernatural.
Mum sounds cool.
I love that. And Adrian, you picked up on a really good point there about, kind of like industries and, how they see found footage. And I mean, Jed, you've got Host and, you've now got Dashcam coming out. I know it's showing at London Film Festival. I know people are very, very excited, and that's found footage as well. So what's been your experience with kind of making another found footage film?
This is quite a spicy topic, I must say, just because there's two ways that studio execs kind of view found footage. Either they say don't do a found footage film, and I think it's for monetary reasons. I think they can't see how they're going to make money out of it, and also they're scared for their own jobs because usually with found footage you don't really need all the bells and whistles. You can kind of just do it yourself, like we did with Host. So they may feel their jobs at risk if they promote found footage. That's one way. The other thing they say is, cool, let's do a found footage, here's 50p, go make a movie, which is obviously not the greatest thing to do. And like, you'll find and Eduardo Sanchez spoke about this as well. Like, after Blair Witch Project, people were just like, "Oh, you made Blair Witch for 20 grand. Here's another 20 grand. Go make us another Blair Witch Project." It's not how it works. But also, the Blair Witch Project did two things to the industry. It obviously put found footage on the map, really, but also it destroyed it. And it destroyed it because there were thousands upon thousands of terrible knockoffs and terrible found footage movies from people who wanted to make a quick buck. That is not how it works. The mythology that's woven into the Blair Witch Project is incredible. You can't just snap your fingers and make a found footage movie. It needs to be really thought out. It needs to be done with love, the same love you put into a conventional movie. But yeah, so I find it very hard. And in fact, I've had meetings in the last week where I've been strongly recommended not to do found footage movies. I'm like, do you not see like what I've done before? And it's kind of working. But I mean, it's my favorite genre, my favorite subgenre of horror. I want to make found footage movies. It's the genre that makes me the most scared. And I think, and I've kind of worked it out, that with found footage, it's the authenticity that makes it scary, because with normal movies you feel safe. There's a barrier between you. You know it's a film. But with found footage, there's no barrier. This could be real. And I think that authenticity is, when the authenticity is there, that's where fear can thrive and grow and germinate. And so I only really ever get scared with found footage movies. Blair Witch Project still scares me. I know people say it doesn't scare them. Just, it scares me to death. Wreck scares me as well. That's terrifying. Paranormal Activity, like 1, 2, well, 1 and 3 scares me. And I don't. It's difficult to find shots fired at Paranormal Activity too. But it's difficult to find any other films in the other subgenres that affect me like found footage affects me. It's and I'm going to keep making found footage movies till the day I die, if I'm allowed to. Not always found footage, but like, I just love it. It's fun to me.
Yeah, I 1000% agree with you, Jed, when you say that the Blair Witch, it was brilliant, and it seemed like it was like so many brilliant ideas. It seemed like I should have thought of that. And then you had so many people who were just grabbing a camera, which is cool also. I like that people were doing that. But what you ended up with was a glut of films on the market everywhere that were cheaply made, quickly made, and turned out, and people got tired of seeing bad examples. I think that was the main poison that was introduced, because, as Jed says, you have to be really clever about it. You have to be very, very thoughtful. And you can't get away with as much bad filmmaking as people seem to think you can, actually. It's very difficult to make one well. And this is the problem. People think that the genre is marked by poor filmmaking in general, bad acting, bad everything, when it's not. The good ones are really good. And that's just because it's cheap and easy to make. That's the perception. There's a lot of them that are not good. But the genre itself, the subgenre itself, has a lot of quality in it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some shocking ones out there, but you know, I think
it's a lot harder to make a traditional narrative fiction film where you need to do a lot more. It just takes more money. You can't just grab your camera and your mates, and the perception is that you can with found footage.
But that's the thing, you know, and I think one thing I loved about the Devil's Doorway is, you know, it's not just, I think a lot of people think of found footage as actually, as you said, you know, you get a camera, you get some friends, what kind of story do you really need? You just kind of hash it out, basically, which I think, you know, is not necessarily true at all. And I think we've seen, you know, through Be My Cat Film for Anne, through Host, and through The Devil's Doorway, that actually a strong story and a hook is what builds out the found footage. And in The Devil's Doorway, you kind of talk about laundries, and it's quite a dark subject, you know, to cover. When you first kind of came up with The Devil's Doorway, did you know it was going to be a found footage film, or did it slip off?
I get asked this question sometimes, and yes, it's kind of a strange one, because I used to work in TV, and like 10 years ago, I had done a bunch of research I used to make like documentaries. That's what I wanted to do. And I'd done a lot of research into Magdalen laundries, tons of research for a year. I'd spoken to people who'd been in them, people who'd been born there, trying to find their mothers and all this stuff. And you know how it is in TV, like everything fell apart at the last minute, didn't end up getting made, but I'd still done all that research. So then when The Devil's Doorway came up, what actually happened was I was a theatre director at the time, but I was making short films as well. And the producer of The Devil's Doorway he wanted to make a found footage film set in a Magdalen laundry, and there was no script or anything. That's what he had. And the Northern Ireland Screen told him to talk to me, because he said, I want someone who can work with improv and actors and all. I was the theatre director. So that's kind of how the conversation started. But he was thinking more something like Grave Encounters or Blair Witch. You get a bunch of people now, stick them in a spooky abandoned laundry and just scare them, you know, which is cool and everything. But it's like, I had done all of this research into these places, and I keenly felt that there was a really strong potential story here. And I think a lot of really good horror comes from social trauma. And at the time, this was a big conversation in Ireland about the legacy of the laundries. And there were women who were only 40 who had been in these places. So I said to him, look, why don't you do it like this? Make it set at 1960, shoot it on film, and make it look like, you know, a Maisels Brothers documentary, kind of take a totally different, like, cinema verite style to it. And that will help it to lift above when you're scrolling through the streaming service and you're seeing all of the bad found footage. You might go, oh, that's interesting, you know. And I thought it was a better way into the human drama. So I thought I'd never hear from him again because it was a different thing and it probably sounded expensive. But luckily, he really liked that idea, and Northern Ireland Screen gave us the money. It wasn't very much money, but they gave us the money to make it, and that's kind of how it happened. So it was just sort of, basically, if I had said, no, I'm not, there's enough for me, he would have made the film anyway, and he would have found someone who would do it in a way that wasn't as thoughtful. You know, that was what I was afraid of, and I felt like there was something in this, that this could be interesting, you know. So that's kind of how it happened. So the cart came after the horse, or before the horse, or however you say it, you know.
No, and I think it's a really good way to explore the topic, you know, in a very sensitive way as well, which is also, you know, it's also very scary, but, you know, it doesn't kind of exploit anything at all. And I want to come on to a bit, we've kind of all touched on it through everything we've spoken about, is the aspect of realism. So I love extreme horror films, and a lot of them are shot in found footage. You know, I love films like August Underground, you know, these ones that look like snuff movies, basically. And for me, I'm kind of watching it going, there's been many a films where I've gone, oh gosh, I better, you know, just double check that I'm not actually sat watching a genuine snuff movie because I'm worried about who's going to knock on my door any minute. One of the films that kind of, you know, encompasses that a little bit is definitely your film, Adrian. You know, it does at times feel a bit like, you know, a snuff movie. Do you think that there's any other kind of horror sub-genre that can really bring that realism, or do we kind of think that it is just like found footage is the one that makes it feel real and tangible?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And you know what? Here's what I think, and that's something that I thought of it. That's something that I thought of it recently, and what I'm thinking actually is a little bit of a criticism of found footage. I'm not sure if the scares in found footage movies, how much they come from the value of the genre, or simply unrelated to the value of the found footage film, but simply related to the horror of watching something which you think is real. And I'm going to tell you something. And I the scariest and the most disturbing videos that I've seen in my life, and a lot of them I regret watching, are the ones of genuine gore on genuine violence and gore on shock sites. And they traumatized me. I was curious to see what happens, you know, when people get killed, tortured, and I'm like, I don't even know how to think of it. I'm already my anxiety goes up when I think of those things. So those are the things that disturb me the most. And then I'm thinking of something else personally as well. A movie that, for example, the found footage movie that scared me the most is a found footage movie that I don't think is actually a good film. It's not even on I would never put it on my list of the greatest found footage films ever made. It's Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. It just happened that when I watched it, I don't know, I was, maybe I was also in a lower period of my life psychologically. I was alone at home in the dark, you know. So when I watched it, it was those shadows, you know, on the walls in the darkness. And there were some shadows in my room, and it really creeped me out. I felt like this literally pumped up my anxiety. So that's the found footage film that scared me the most. So, but at the same time, it's not a found footage film that I appreciate, you know. When I look, I can't say like, wow, great film. Okay, just okay, you know. So the thing that scared me didn't have to do with that. Had to do more with my personal experiences and I think has to do with it looking real, you know. So when a found footage film really convince you, when there is that immersive experience, you know, when you totally get into it and you get scared. My question is, do you get scared because you are watching a good movie, or do you get scared simply because your brain thinks that they is watching a shock video on a shock site. You know, when somebody is actually getting murdered, or there is an actual ghost. You know, imagine watching a found footage film and believing into that reality there. That's literally as if, imagine watching in primetime news stories of the first ghost caught on camera. That would be fucking scary to see such a video, you know? So practically, this is what a found footage movie does to the psyche when the psyche actually believes in the reality there, you know? So yeah, that's my question to, not to you, in general, my question to the world. Yeah,
No, I
about
think
what
it's.
is really...
I think that's a really good point, actually. You know,
Yeah.
because like I said, a lot of the times I'm, you know, googling things, going, "Oh God, you know, maybe the fear is coming from the fact that I'm genuinely thinking it's real." And I want to throw the kind of, you know, Adrian's thoughts over to you, Mary Beth, because you've seen a lot of found footage. Do you think it's the realism? Do you think it's, you know, gore? I mean, I know obviously found footage is not just about gore or these nasty ones. There's also supernatural. But what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Well, I think the realism is a huge part of why it's so scary, because it's like, why would anyone want to make a movie that looks like this? Is always like my thought. Like, who wants to put out a movie that has like the camera going all over the place? Like, there's no way that anyone, like, in the back of your head, you're like, who would put out a movie like this if it's not real? Like, without it wanting to like reveal some kind of truth. And I think that realism gets to you, but especially that the realism that really gets into my head is the second screen life horror movies like Host and like The Den and like Unfriended, that take the interfaces that we are so familiar with. Like, this could be a horror, like, and now at this point, this could be a horror movie. Like, I always joke with my podcast host when I'm recording a podcast, like, oh, we're gonna be it's like, it's the next Host, like something crazy is gonna happen behind one of us, and like it's gonna become a horror movie. And like taking those digital interfaces that we're so used to, especially when you're watching the movie on your laptop, which is like a whole other level of experience that people have talked about, like with Host and other things, it's like it feels like you are watching that happening in front of you. You feel like you're the person part of that Zoom call, or like part of that web chat, like that like the chat. You feel like you're there with them, and that to me is horrifying when we take technology, the thing that we kind of think we have control over, and it becomes a site of terror. And I think, you know, that's how found footage has evolved, especially now in the past couple of years when filmmaking has been even harder to do in person. It's found footage has evolved to kind of understand what we're afraid of. And I think that's what I love about it, is that in looking at trends in the films and what's been made, that, you know, found footage directors are really tapping into what scares us and hitting that authenticity of why we're so scared. I think that these movies also have like a really intense emotional core to them, because when the camera is moving around really fast, typically like there's a moment of terror, like there's something really horrifying happening. So you feel that kind of kinetic, chaotic energy with even the camera movement, which, yeah, is nauseating for some people, but I also think rather effective in conveying like how horrifying something is happening. Because you think about that, you're filming something and something terrifying happens, you're not going to focus on the shot, like you're going to throw your phone to the ground and sprint away. And that to me translates, it doesn't always translate well, but when it's a well done found footage, maybe those moments I think are super effective in conveying just how terrifying that situation is. But like I said, I think like what scares me even more now, and what found footage movies more recently have really terrified me, are movies like The Host and like The Den, that take our fears of the internet and amplify them and really showcase like what can be going on through the internet, and also what portals can the internet open, both real and paranormal. Like that is also a really kind of terrifying possibility that I think is just starting to get tapped into in the format.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Jed, you absolutely tapped into it. I mean, you know, with Host, we're all sat at home, poured out our minds, Zoom calls and quizzes, like no one's fucking business. You know, everyone was kind of like, I'm sure, sick to death of doing Zoom calls. And I guess you took that concept, and we were all still stuck at home, you know, screens were only live, and made us all go, oh shit, you know, what would happen if, you know, that goes down in our house? was it, was it something you immediately knew you wanted to tap into? Was it born out of lockdown? How did that kind of come around? Because I think it is really unique in its portrayal.
Yeah, well, we were seeing, like, as soon as lockdown happened, that, like, I go on a lot of horror sites, and I unfortunately read the comments on a lot of these horror sites, which you should never do, by the way. Never,
Jen,
never,
as
never.
a writer, don't ever
Yeah.
read the comments.
I know.
No.
I know. Like, I'm learning that. But like I started to see back in like February, March last year, at the start of the pandemic, someone's gonna make a Zoom horror movie. It's gonna be the worst thing ever. It's gonna be the worst thing ever. And I was just like, And then it all started from basically Rob, who's a director of host. He called me up one day and said he wants to prank our friends. So I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's this 2-minute video of
It's incredible.
You've seen it, yeah?
Like, I saw that short and I was like sending it to everyone. I'm like, this is why found footage is so cool. And then host happened, and I was like, I knew it. Sorry.
But do you know what? We weren't going to film it. Like, it was literally last minute. Like, just as the friends were coming onto the Zoom, I was like, Rob, should I record this? And he was like, yeah, go for it. Recorded it, and he pretended he died and stuff, blah blah blah. We put it online, not thinking, because we come from doing like 7-8 years of short films that got some attention. But we put this online. It got 18 million views in like 3 days across all the places we put it. We were like, what is going on? This is so weird. Like, this costs zero money. And then obviously all these companies started coming to us saying, oh, loved your short. To me, it's not a short. To me, it's like a funny little prank video. We saw your short. Can't wait to see the feature. What have you got in mind? So Rob called me and said, okay, everyone's asking us for a feature. Can you think of anything? And I was like, I had absolutely no idea, Rob. Let me think on it. And then at 4:30 in the morning, I texted in Zoom seance, just those words, Zoom seance, and I fell asleep. And then pretty much by like 5 hours later, the next day, Rob's like, okay, I'm pitching it to this place, this place, this place, this place. And everyone wanted to make it, weirdly, because we had made a whole bunch of cool shots. And the weird prank video was getting a lot of attention. But it was really only Shudder who understood that we needed to make this now and not wait till the pandemic was over. That we were like, we want this out in 12 weeks time. We want it like literally on your platform in 12 weeks time. And they were like, can you do it? I'm like, yeah, of course we could. We hadn't written one word at that point. So yeah, we said to them, we don't have a script, we don't have anything yet. We know it's a Zoom seance. We're going to use our mates. Trust us. And then they gave us the money to make it. And then we put it online. There was no trailer, there was no poster, no one knew really anything about it. And then it's crazy. It's like the opposite of what should happen, really. Like, it just got so much attention straight away, and then it just really blew up. And I still don't understand. I still can't believe it. Like, ever since, it's like over a year ago now.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. I mean, it's so amazing how a concept can go from a prank to, a film that now, I mean, Host is all anyone was talking about, last year. It was kind of like, have you seen Host? Even my friends that don't like horror films were like, oh my God, I watched that. They were like, it's blowing my mind.
Well,
like,
we went on BBC Breakfast. We were on the breakfast TV at like 6:30 a.m, like talking about like ghosts and stuff. And then we were on ITV News, like one of our big channels in the UK, ITV News at 6 p.m. at the height of the pandemic. Like, the stories before and after us were about people dying. And then we're like, here we have two guys from South London and their film Host. And like, it's great. And Rob did this amazing prank on the newsreader with the cupboards open behind him, like live on TV. And she was like, it's great. So yeah, it's unbelievable. And obviously off the back of that, like, we got Blumhouse interested, so we're doing a bunch of films with them too.
Amazing. So I know that we're all obviously here because we are found footage horror fans, of course. Why else? So I'm really keen to know, like, what are some of our absolute favorite found footage horror films? And I'd love to start with you, Ash, and also at the same time ask you, were there any particular found footage horror films that also influenced The Devil's Doorway? Because I think, I watched it, I rewatched it not that long ago. And I also watched The Borderlands, which came after The Devil's Doorway, but I was like, those two make like a great pairing. But I can see a lot of influence from other films. So I'm just really keen to hear, what your favorites and what you were inspired by.
Well, I obviously the Blair Witch Project is up there. I also really enjoyed As Above, So Below, which I think you referenced earlier. I enjoy. Let's see. I like so many of them. Really, it's a subgenre that I really do like. In terms of what influenced it, it's kind of funny because at that point I'd been working in theater for like 6 years, so I was a theater director, and I wasn't really watching a whole ton of found footage films specifically. I mean, I always have been a horror fan, but I felt that this all come up very suddenly, and kind of like with Jed's experience, it was like there was no time. It was just there was no script, and we had something like 2.5 months in which to make the entire film with like nothing from ground zero. So I wanted to do a ton of research then, like, quick, give me all the found footage movies. I need to figure this thing out. But actually the biggest influences on it were the Maisels brothers documentaries, because I mean, I'm thinking about Blair Witch Project in terms of how they kind of choreograph some of the scares and stuff like that. But in terms of the whole aesthetic, the whole vibe and atmosphere of the thing, I was looking at films like Salesmen, totally not horror films, because I felt that it was important to give it a aesthetic that felt really different. That felt, first of all, it had to be a certain type of aesthetic to be a film that was made in 1960. And I felt that had a lot of value in different ways, but particularly for the realism of it. So genuinely, those movies from the mid-60s, documentaries, were the biggest influences. But the Blair Witch Project, certainly, yes. A lot of people have said Borderlands to me. I didn't see Borderlands until like ages later, once so many people said it to me, and I was like, I have to watch this. Love that too. There's so many, it's just like hard to list them all. But yeah, I don't even know if I've answered your question. I feel like I've gone everywhere except maybe to the point, but maybe I hit it somewhere in there, did I?
No, absolutely. And actually, I love the point that you picked up on, that aesthetics, because I think, I think found footage, it gets slagged off so much, doesn't it, for us? It's like, is there any aesthetics to a found footage? And actually, one thing I loved about The Devil's Doorway is I was like, it looks so, it's got a very distinct look to it, and it's not shaky camera. It's almost like, exactly as you said, Ash, 60s documentary, and again ties back into the realism we were talking about, because it does, I watched it and I was like, fuck, this feels real.
Well, thank you so much, but I really appreciate that. I think part of it is, and we've kind of touched on this, all of us already, is that when you're making a found footage film, you have to be really thoughtful and think about what's actually happening here. You have to think in a totally different way. So 1960, the type of film and camera that they're using and everything, the whole shaky cam thing wasn't even really an option, really. There is some running down hallways, but it's just too heavy to do that to the extent that you see it in other films. So a lot of it is on a tripod by design, and because that's what it would have been. So it's a lot stiller than some other films. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. And Adrian, what are some of your favorite found footage films?
Well, let's see. Favorite. I always have, I think, in a weird way, a problem with this favorite thing, because there are. It's very hard for me to respond. Not just found footage in general, about films. What are my favorites? Because there are some films that I believe that they are very good. There are some films that influenced me. There are other films that impressed me, and they're not always the same. They don't always. So I'm not sure which ones are the favorite. I can tell you, definitely, the Blair Witch Project is the one that influenced my career the most. Also with the way they made it, the improvisational methods they used. I'm literally reading the IMDb trivia and the Wikipedia on how they did it. That was literally my film school, and found footage. So huge influence. On the other hand, sorry, I have to say this. Like I rewatched Blair Witch Project, and it's like bored me. I couldn't. I feel like the betrayer of found footage now. But
We're going to keep it out. You got to
go. Yeah, so still like huge respect for the movie and what they did and stuff. It just didn't hold up on a rewatch for me. The Blair Witch Project, a movie that I think is, in my opinion, might be the best found footage that I've seen so far is Exhibit A, a British film from 2017. A found footage drama, and that's a movie that was also influenced me a lot for Be My Cat, because it showed me that found footage doesn't have to necessarily be horror, and that's my wish. I always wanted to see found footage expanded into other genres as well. I think there's a lot of potential, because if people can, if found footage can be used to emphasize the fear, for the horror effect, I'm sure it could be used to not to emphasize, sorry, not the right word, to magnify, the fear. I'm sure it can be used to also magnify other types of feelings. I mean, I don't know, like in drama or in all other types of genres, like to increase the empathy that people feel, with the immersion in that world. So I would love to see that more, actually. And Exhibit A did that wonderfully, because I see some people say it's a horror movie. I don't think. I think it's more of drama and the thriller, and so well made. Zero Day influenced me and impressed me. Again, I think for the same reason, because it went on a different path, not in the horror direction. It's not like I'm a horror fan, but back then I had this thing, I wanted to see found footage expanded beyond the horror genre. I don't know why. Not sure. And then recently I've rewatched Lake Mungo with my wife, because I said, like, hey, you need to watch this film, because it's I think it's the best fake documentary which is not found footage that I've seen. I know lots of people put fake documentaries in the same category with found footage, but technically it's not, because nobody finds the footage. It's like implied that the filmmakers that made it brought it to us. So yeah, that's a weird concept, but I think it's such a good film. And like the ending of it, I didn't get the value of it and the metaphysics in the ending, the way film conventions and film language is being bent. There's one scene, I don't want to say what it is so that to not spoil it for whoever is listening this. So I think this would be and recently I've seen Mother of Monsters by Tusia Lyman. Again, I would say not necessarily horror, more like a thriller drama with some horror elements, and it impressed me how much it went into politics, and how ambitious, to do a found footage film that talks about not just gun violence, it talks about war violence, that talks about America's obsession with wars and all this stuff, like these very heavy social issues and implications, and even comes with a solution to these problems, and that was wonderful, to use the found footage format for something like this. Yep. So these are and there are more, like there are many more. There are many more, actually, that had something that I liked in.
Yeah, some great picks in there. I mean, confession, I hated Lake Mungo, but that's another topic for another time.
I'm leaving. I'm kicking myself out of the panel.
So before I get kicked out, what about you, Jed? What are some of your favourites?
So Lake Mungo, definitely up there. I think Lake Mungo, for me, is one of the scariest films ever made. I genuinely do think that. You have to be in the right mood for it, though. When I first watched it, and this is the thing, Lake Mungo is so well done. That director's never done anything else, and that film hasn't got the flowers it should get because it's incredible. Some of the moments in the last third of that movie are incredible, like visually incredible, blows your mind. explains supernatural. It's just everything in this one movie, and it's just so simple and about grief, and it was so human as well. And some people might not call it found footage. I really do think it's a found footage movie, because the filmmakers are within the movie themselves, which is how I kind of consider something found footage. If someone who's a character within the movie is holding the camera and filming stuff, it's a found footage movie. The other one, Noroi the Curse, which is incredible, like, horror movie. It's just incredible. Again, the imagery is so spooky, and I don't know if it's because it's a non-American found footage movie, but it just seems so real, like everything that goes on. And also Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, I don't know if you've seen that Korean movie. It would have been a lot more kind of in the public consciousness and thought of as scary if it wasn't for a lot of Korean boy bands kind of doing videos of them watching it and being overly freaked out by it. So it was kind of adopted by a certain kind of like teenage crowd who kind of made it lose its effectiveness. But that movie is legit like scary. I thought it was great. And for me, it's a lot of the Asian horror movies and found footage movies that they really great. Is it called Murder Death Koreatown?
Yeah, Murder Death Koreatown.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that feels real as hell. Like, I was like, this legit looks like a real thing. And because the guy who's going around with the camera is speaking to real life people. Like, this isn't like, these aren't actors. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting. It actually felt a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go, Mareth.
The marketing was similar to Blair Witch, where like they were selling VHS. Like, I got one of the VHS tapes from that, where they only sold a certain number, and then it had like footage that had never been revealed before. So they had this really fascinating viral strong word, because they didn't go as viral, but they had a similar marketing campaign of like playing into the aesthetics of VHS tapes and like sending them to people and having weird stuff on them. It's really cool. It's like the whole like energy around that movie is fascinating.
Yeah, there's that, and there's just one more which came out recently, which is called Death of a Vlogger, which somehow people kind of really miss. But there is some stuff, and like that filmmaker, like I've spoken to him recently, he's really trying to get another film made. But if you watch that film, there is stuff in that film that I don't understand how he did. I just do not understand how he did some of that stuff. And there's one bit where, this isn't a spoiler, but there's a seance, and even though it's found footage, the camera work he does in that seance scene is really, really good. And I said to him, I'm afraid I'm going to have to steal that at some point. It's too good. And he's like, don't you dare. Yeah. But like, I loved it, and it came out like maybe about a year before Host. But
me too. I also love that one.
You love that one, right? Yeah.
Yes. It's so scary and so efficient. Like the filmmaking craft is like. It's like I can see an already established filmmaker with huge visions, and wow.
I love it. Yeah. And it's set in Scotland as well, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, again, like Adrian said, like there's a million to choose from, but those are my picks.
So many. And okay, finally, and then we're going to wrap things up because we are out of time. But Mary Beth, I feel like your list is probably ridiculously.
I've been pulled up on my phone, just like scrolling through, like, which one should I say? I mean, we've already covered some really good ones, but there are a couple that I just also wanted to shout out. Savage Land is a really incredible found footage movie that uses photography, like still photography, in a way that I have never seen before in found footage and haven't since, in terms of like creating these really haunting images. And it's like it's like a true crime, zombie, maybe weird. It's incredibly well done. And that is, I think, definitely worth seeking out. I think it's on Amazon Prime. Another film that I really love telling people about is called Webcast. It's a folk horror found footage, which is a very exciting combination of things for me. But it's really well done. And another one that's similar is called Cronewood. They're both folk horror found footage, but Cronewood's also really good because it plays with the idea of like who's holding the camera and the idea of the gaze of the camera person and how that affects how you're perceiving the events in front of you, which I think is really cool. I feel like in most found footage movies, it's like one camera person most of the time, but in this, halfway through, the camera person changes in a really kind of gross, fucked up way. And it also has this really interesting kind of address of sexual assault themes that I think are in a way that isn't usually explored in horror, which I really enjoy, because I also really enjoy like how horror handles subjects like that. And then I did want to shout out Koji Shirashi, who did Nori, his other film Occult, which is a little bit harder to find, but it's another found footage movie, and it's a cosmic horror found footage, which is again something I did not know was possible, but he's a madman with horror. So that is an incredible film. It's pretty difficult to watch, like to find, unfortunately. Again, I wish a lot of these like non-Western found footage movies were much easier to access because they're so incredibly good. And then the last one is Brian Bertino, who did The Strangers, did a really good found footage movie called Mockingbird that is full of his nihilism and is just like so upsetting, but I think it's really well made in how he intersects 3 stories using found footage into like one really, really creepy, effective end of the film. And then another place is my favorite to find new found footage. It's actually TikTok, which I know sounds weird, but there are some incredible things being made on TikTok by like horror filmmakers who are saying this is really happening to me. And so they have these series of videos of like, oh, there's something happening in my house. And you like, I have bought it. Like in my head, I'm like, they're probably making a movie. But I'm like, this is the authenticity that app kind of is built on lends itself so well for found footage. And this found footage format is obviously, they're very short and kind of choppy, but it's like a vlog. It's a vlog and it's real-time found footage. And it's a really cool experience. So I would recommend going on TikTok and kind of exploring the horror kind of content creators there, because yeah, it might sound kind of cheesy, but there's some really cool stuff going on, like what people are able to make with just their phones. Like we know that, but on TikTok especially, it's a really cool place to kind of find original horror content.
I love the TikTok horror stuff. 2 a.m. like I will never sleep again.
Yeah. Why do we do this to ourselves? I don't know, but I do it with movies anyway, so might as well just do it with my like doom scrolling on apps at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Literally. And I guess I'm going to give some really horrible recommendations, which don't go and watch them. We're going to ruin your life. So I'm going to run through them really quickly. So there's Sorgi Plakov, Descent into Darkness. Very, very dark. I love that film. Home movie, if you want to see kids fuck up their parents. Tumbling Doll of Flesh, which...
Sorry, just incredible.
Are you making this up, Zoe?
No, these are real damn.
No, I'm Googling this. Tumbling what of death?
Tumbling Doll of Flesh, also known as Niku Dorama. That film is, wow, don't recommend it, but here I am recommending it.
Hey, I'll watch it.
Underground, Guinea Pig, Flowers of Flesh and Blood, and also I recently watched, because sadly the director passed away, Butterfly Kisses, which
yes.
Amazing movie.
It's
amazing
so
movie.
good, and I'm so sad. And like, he was incredible. Like that movie was incredible in terms of like creating lore and multiple stories within one found footage movie. Like absolutely incredible. It's just such a big loss.
Phenomenal.
That movie should have been massive. Like it's such a shame.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for coming and talking about found footage horror. I think we probably could have spoken about it for another like 8 hours. Maybe we can come back to part 2 and just keep on giving recommendations. It seems like we have many of them. But I will make sure that everyone watching can follow you, find your films, make sure that they can check out anything you're working on. So I will make sure to post all of your links and everything in there. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'm going to let you go and enjoy your evenings, days, whatever time zones we're in, some point of the day. And yeah, a big thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You.
Great to meet you, Mary Beth and Ashlyn as well. I haven't met you guys before, so lovely to meet you.
Same.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.